Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Michael, and I'm exploring all the different ways that stationery brings me joy. I'm really excited about today's video because as someone who is about 6 months into my stationery journey and about 6 months into my fountain pen journey, I'm excited that I know a little bit enough about fountain pens to be able to participate in this conversation. Originally, I saw the video by Kenshin Crafts, and I'll make sure to link him below, where he asked 20 questions about his fountain pen preferences and answered them. And then another creator who I follow here on YouTube, Tiny Tiger Company or Tiny Tiger Co., also made a video answering those same 20 questions. And there's been a few creators also who have jumped on board. When I commented on Tiny Tiger Co.'s video, she said, "Oh, I really would love for you to answer these questions, to hear my opinions." And I thought at first that, well, I don't know if I really can. I'm not really like that into this. But then I thought, well, maybe there are other people who are early into the fountain pen hobby who, like me, just enjoy hearing about these things, and can take, my preferences as a newbie as something that they can, muddle over. And so I wanted to do that in kind of an interesting way, where I'm going to be kind of re-inking some of my new pens for the summer. I'm sorry, not new pens, re-inking some of the pens that I already own for the summer. And while I do that, kind of answer the questions along the way. I did do a walkthrough of my ink journal in an earlier video, and I can link that. But in that video, I discussed about perhaps wanting to do something different with the back pages. And I decided that one of the things that I would do is kind of create a section for the pens that I own, and then keep a log of the inks that they have been inked with. So I went through and I drew a little and colored in a little like image for each pen. And again, I am not I wouldn't call myself an artist, but I think that they're pretty representative. And then as I re-ink these pens with different inks, I thought I could then write what that ink was as kind of a way to keep a record of my journey. And so there are some pens that either I want to try them with a different ink because of the nib or the way that the ink performed in them, or just for better matching the vibe of the pen, so to speak, which is a spoiler for one of the questions moving forward. And so as I re-ink some of these pens and write in my ink log here, I thought I could answer the questions as well. So the first question is, do you prefer flat tops or cigar shapes? And I would have to say that most of the pens that I've owned up to this point have been flat tops, and therefore I'm really comfortable with the idea of a flat top, and how they work. But recently, I've acquired a couple of pens that are cigar shapes, and I have to say, like this Esterbrook Estie that I did an unboxing of as my first video, I'm kind of feeling it as well. So I think I lean towards a preference towards flat tops, just because that is like the majority of my experience. But I see myself like maybe opening up to the more classic cigar shape of the pens. I originally inked this pen with a little bit of the Forgotten Iced Coffee ink, but I think I'm going to actually move forward with having this pen inked up with the Robert Oster signature ink in the Coffee Monster ink, which is also a collab between the Coffee Monster Co., but instead of with Esterbrook ink like Forgotten Iced Coffee, it's a Robert Oster signature ink. The second question says gold or silver trims. And I have to say that for this, I really don't have a super tight preference on either. It seems to me that like as long as it kind of matches the vibe of the pen, I'm okay with it. I tend to lean towards silver, but I don't have any problem with gold. I think for a long time I viewed gold as like kind of flashy, and I don't know, I'm just not really a super flashy person in general, and so I thought I prefer things that are silver. But I think gold, really has its place, and even though it may not be something that in the past I was super into, I've kind of noticed that on some pens I really enjoy it. For example, one of the very first pens that I owned was this Kaweko Sport, and it has gold as the trim, and I very much liked it. And so from very early on, I was like, oh, even though I tend to think of myself as having a preference towards silver, I really think I'm split 50-50, and don't really have a super big preference. All right, I've inked this pen, and now it's time to come over here and turn to my Right, so we've got ourselves the Robert Oster signature Coffee Monster in this pen. It's really exciting. So the next question is posted or unposted. And for me, I just really love posting my pen. I love the feel of the pen posted, the balance that it gives while I'm writing. It just like feels more comfortable to me in my hand. And I would say that that's true for like 95% of the writing experiences that I have. There's only about 2 pens in my collection currently that I don't like posting the pen as I write. And one of them is actually this TWSBI Eco T that I have. I don't know, whenever I post it, I don't know if it's the way that I'm writing, but as I move, maybe my hand is like rubbing in a certain way, because the place where you place your fingers is more triangular. I don't know what it is, but I tend to pop the top off, and so I'll just leave it off and unpost it while I'm writing. The other is my Muji aluminum pen, which is currently in pieces, so I can't show you, but it is just difficult to post that pen. It is a very, like, let's see if I can show you, even though it's deconstructed. This is the bottom, and you can see there's a very thin sliver around the rim that then this cap posts into, and it's kind of difficult to snap them together. And so I don't really want to be playing around and trying to like hit the bullseye every time, so I tend to leave it off. This TWSBI Eco used to actually have the Robert Oster signature Coffee Monster ink in it, and I'm now going to be re-inking it with Sailor's Afternoon Tea. I've seen a couple of people using this ink, and I found a bottle at a really good price, and it is a tinier bottle. What I'm telling myself is the last bottle that I buy before I start doing samples. But I'm gonna fill this up right now. So this lends itself to the next question, which is cartridge converters or internal fillers. I like, the ease of the internal filler is really lovely, especially the vacuum internal fillers. I have a vacuum pen in my collection that I will be showing later, and like that's kind of like magic-y science to me when I use it. I'm just like amazed by it. And I do like that I can just very quickly get ink into a pen this way. However, I like converters, I think, a little more, simply because I can use the syringe to really get a great amount of ink into the pen. I feel like with the internal filler, I'm not getting as much ink in there as I really would like. And maybe it's the way that I'm doing it, and I just need to, you know, as a novice, like get some more experience, but it just feels like, and maybe it's part of the beauty of the ink sloshing around in there, but I'm just more satisfied when I can really fill the cartridge up as much as I can with a syringe. All right, so now we have this Eco T. Let me find it in my notebook. Oh, and this is in the Saffron color, the TWSBI Eco T. And I feel like this afternoon tea ink is gonna look really nice in it. Oh, I love that. So here we have it now, the afternoon tea ink. So the next question is bottled inks or samples. And I feel like, based on my experience, I'm going to have to say bottled inks, only because that is all I own right now. And I've tried my best to, you know, get the smaller size of inks, so I'm not, you know, having a full 50 milliliter when I don't need to. Although I do have some in my collection. But I know that for my pocketbook and for my storage space, I need to pivot a little to some samples. And really, that way I get to just experience the gamut. And you'll see as I continue answering these questions, there's some things that I haven't experienced yet in inks, and I think starting a more robust sample collection is going to really allow me to try a lot of things out. When it comes to pens, the next question is subtle or flashy. And I have to say, as of right now, I don't know if you can see the pens that are sitting here to the side, I think I'm a little bit of a subtle person. I don't love anything that is too, or I have not gravitated towards anything that is too super flashy when it comes to pens. I go for one color, maybe a little bit of a design. Not to say that I'm against flashy pens, and I do see people on YouTube and when I go to the shops just having these pens that are like really, really gorgeous. And so I'm not there yet, but for where I am in my journey, I tend to lean towards subtle. But I'm excited to find the flashy pen that really strikes my fancy. The next question is ink window or no ink window. And I think the only pens that I have that have an ink window are my Lamy Safaris. And I have to say, like, I do appreciate having the little window to kind of tell me when the ink is running low. But I don't know if I love the way that it looks on the pen. I feel like it kind of just like breaks up the classic look. And so I think ultimately, because I have so few of them and I'm not super huge fan of the way that it visually looks, I'm gonna say no ink window is where I'm falling right now. The next question is twist cap or snap. And I have to say, even though this sound is satisfying, this little very subtle. I think my Pilot Para is actually better at this. Oh yeah. While that click is satisfying, I just love a twist cap. There's something so dramatic about twisting the pen and pulling it out. I don't know. Maybe I've watched too many old movies where, you know, the businessman takes out his pen and is like, let's sign these important documents. And there's always a little twist, the flair. Maybe I just love the drama. I really love the twisting motion, especially in this Estie because it has like that spring in the cap, even more dramatic. But yeah, I think that there's just something lovely about a good twist. And even like that sound as you stick the pen in and then give it the twist. I really love it. Gold nibs or steel nibs is the next question. And I have to say that due to my very limited experience, currently I have to say steel nib just because I do not own a pen that has an actual gold nib. I have like gold plated steel, but no actual gold nibs. So like, for example, like while this may look gold, I know that it is not actual gold. And so, yeah, steel is my go-to at the moment. But, you know, one day I will save up and get myself a nice gold nib. Or maybe even just get to sample one. Maybe the next time I'm at a store, I will ask them to let me get my hands on one just to see what the writing experience is like if they allow it. But yeah, so steel for now because I know no other options. While I answer the next question, I have this Kaweko Perkeo pen. And when I bought it, it came with a palm green Kaweko ink cartridge. But I am going to be putting a new ink in there. In another video, I talked about this Jacques ink, Lierre Sauvage, and I'm going to be inking my Perkeo with it now that the palm green ink cartridge was at its end. And while I do that, I can talk about the next question, which is basic ink nib grinds or special custom nib grinds. And unfortunately, just like the question about gold or steel, I have to go with basic nib grinds because that is the only kind of nib that I've experienced so far. I have not had the pleasure of getting a custom nib grind done yet. I was very close to getting a custom nib when I bought the Coffee Monster Co. and Esterbrook collaboration on the Estie. They did have a journaler nib that you could get, but I also knew that was going to be insanely difficult to get, and I ended up just going with an extra fine basic nib. But having watched Helen's videos, Helen of the Coffee Monster Co., and seeing I believe she has one of the pens she got at her LA event, she had them grind it in a reverse architect, and that just looks so cool. The fact that it writes one way or one style when written, you know, with the nib in one direction, and then a completely different style when you flip the nib or write in a different direction. So cool. And she's so talented, like the way that she can like flip the pen while she's drawing things. So amazing. To use both of the grinds to like the best effect in the same drawing, I think is just really, really awesome. And so I have the hope of one day getting to experience a custom grind myself. Perhaps that'll be the day when I can afford my fancy gold nib pen as well. But we'll see. So I've got the Jacques ink in this pen. Okay, so I just gave the converter a little twist to try and force the ink through. And now I've got here. And here we've got the Jacques Lierre Sauvage, which is writing a little lighter than I thought it would. If you look here at the swatch and then at the writing. So that brings us on to our next question, which is planner or journaler? And I started off very much as a planner, someone who, you know, my introduction into like the stationery world, you know, has been for, now I understand, many, many years, but I was just a very dedicated planner. Like I was very into my academic planner in school, in college, you know, grad school, and then as a teacher using my planner, and eventually, you know, 15 years later when I moved into administration using my planner. But I was using it like very, very like, just, you know, bare bones for the basics of planning. And I think having discovered the world of, you know, stationery and all the different products and things, I realized that like there's a lot more opportunity to have fun in the planning, and then also in journaling, and, you know, it's spread out to there. So I think I started as a planner, but I'm definitely now a planner and a journaler, or at least attempting to become more of a journaler. This leads us to question 12, old Tomo River paper or Sanzen? And unfortunately, kind of like the gold or steel nib, and like the question of a basic nib grind versus custom, I never got to experience the old Tomo River paper because I just got into this hobby last December. All I know is the new Sanzen paper in the Hobonichis that I own. And I think that, you know, thankfully I might be very, very lucky in both the cousin avec that I have, and in my weeks, and in my techo. I haven't really experienced that, you know, bad of a paper. There's been a couple of inks or in nibs that are like more medium, where I've had some issues with bleed through, but I think that has to do more with the way that I write and how wet those inks were. And perhaps in the old Tomoe River paper, that wouldn't have been an issue. And if so, then I lament that I never got to use it, because that would be amazing. But there's only been a couple of instances where it's really been a problem. And then the rest of the inks and pens that I've used in it have been fine. So I guess I have to say I'm on board with Sanzen, only because I don't have anything to compare it to. Which leads us into question 13, soft or stiff gold nibs. And again, don't really have a way to give an opinion on that, because I have never experienced a gold nib. I could say that I probably would appreciate more of a soft gold nib. I do like the steel nibs that I have that tend to have more of a give as I'm writing. So maybe a soft gold nib would be really interesting for me to try out. But I'll have to wait until that time comes to be able to really give an opinion here. I'm just going to start loading up my next pen while I move on to the next question. And this is a pen that is an internal filler. It's a piston, so, you know, you stick the pen in and push this little piston down. This is my Asvine V126 in matte black. Again, you can see my illustration not exactly capturing the true length of this pen, but the spirit is there. And so I used to have this inked with Dominant Industry Seaweed, and it was okay. I just didn't find myself reaching for it a lot, because I think that the ink didn't really perform as well as it could in this pen. I think the extra fine nib just doesn't allow the like shading on this ink, or the sheen, to really like shine through. And so I decided to ink this pen with my Pilot Iroshizuku kiri-same. I know that they stopped producing kiri-same, which is why I got this 50 milliliter bottle. I was trying to see if they had 15 milliliter bottles of it, and they did not. And so it is now, I now own this one. I have the Fuyu Syogun, which is like the other gray in the Iroshizuku line, and I just needed to have its mate, twin, if you will, though fraternal, not identical. And I thought this pen would be a really great one to kind of ink up with this ink. And so here we go. Oh no. See these piston fillers? You always, I feel like you have to be more in the ink than you think you need to be. All right. So the next question is shade, sheen, or shimmer? And my answer to that question is yes. I love fountain pen inks for all of the different aspects that come with them. I love inks that are just like a straight writing of a gorgeous color. I love inks that have shade in them when I swatch them. I love to see how that shading can create, you know, different intensities of the color. Trying to see if I have a good one that has a good shading. Like, so I also love a good sheen, like this yama-budo. I don't know if I can capture the metallic sheen there. Oh yeah. I think it's beautiful. Again, love the drama. And I don't own any shimmer inks yet. I was a little afraid of them because of, you know, clogging up the pen, and it makes it more difficult to clean. And so I haven't dipped my toe into shimmer, although now that I am shifting into getting samples, I think that's something that I will definitely need to do first, is get some samples of some inks that have a shimmer, and definitely do my research on which pens can handle that better. Now that I'm a little more comfortable with cleaning the pens, taking the ones apart that need to be taken apart, I feel confident that I'll be able to get a shimmer ink, and if it does clog something, that I'll know how to take care of it. It is very intimidating though, and so I wanted to make sure that I got the basics down first. And so now in this Asvine, I have my Pilot Iroshizuku. In the kiri-same color. We can see that there. Next question, brand name or custom maker pens. I feel bad that I cannot answer some of these questions without the answer of only being able to give the answer that matches my experience. But for now, I have to go with brand name just because I have not had a custom maker pen. There are some people on YouTube that I have seen who make their own pens, and it is a beautiful process. It's very complicated. I'm seeing them, like, you know, kind of create the pen from resin or wood or other materials is like just mind-boggling, and the craftsmanship that it takes. I hope to one day own a custom maker pen, just because I think it would be beautiful to say, like, I have this thing that was, you know, crafted for me. But as of right now, I kind of have to go with the brand name. Although even then, I feel like maybe I could answer with the subcategory of not necessarily brand name, but also like other brands that are more dupes for brand names, right? Knowing that this Asvine or some of the Mahjong pens that I have are, you know, more affordable dupes of like the Pilot Vanishing Point or Pilot Custom or other pens. I'm all for that as well, right? Like, I hope to one day like have those pricier pens and those and see how they perform. But I'm really, really glad that there are like affordable dupes to be able to use to see what to experience, like, you know, the piston fill or like just the look of it to have in my collection. The next question is limited edition or standard. And I think that is an interesting question. I definitely have to go with standard for the most part. I do sometimes get roped in by this idea of a limited edition pen. And I think that is because I let myself fall to that feeling of like, oh, well, there's only so many, so I need to get one, or else I'm not going to be part of like the people that have that. And I think you can tell that I definitely fell into that in getting this Coffee Monster Co. Esterbrook, although it is a beautiful pen, and I really, really love Helen and the work that she does. And I was so excited to be able to support her anniversary collection and to allow myself my first Estie, and for it to be one that, you know, she collaborated on. I had many great reasons to get this pen, but there was a part of the sliver of the reasons that it was because I knew there's a limited amount of these, and it made me want it just a little bit more. And I know that sounds like, saying it out loud sounds silly. I don't think that it takes away from any of the joy that this pen brings me, but I do have to be honest with myself that is part of the feeling in wanting it, right? I think it wasn't the only reason, and I think that's why, you know, ultimately I still went ahead with the purchase. But I think it's important to acknowledge that, yeah, that part of the reasoning existed. And so I want to say standard just because I think that, like, having access to things that are easy to get is important, and to not let myself fall into that capitalist mentality of like, well, there's only this for a little bit of time, so I need it. And there are moments where I let myself fall into that, but I'm definitely trying to be more reflective as I continue in my hobby, in this hobby, and in growing in my stationery products and pens and inks. Before I move on to the next question, I have this Pilot Kaküno, and my friend recently went to Japan, and while he was in Japan, he knows that I'm really into stationery, and he was at the store Loft in Tokyo, and he went in to look for this pen, because I had sent him a list of a couple of things, like, hey, if you have the availability, if you're in a store and you see this, and I just thought it would be really fun to get a Pilot Kaküno from Tokyo, and knowing that this is like a very affordable thing to ask somebody to grab for me. And so he did, and I got it in this lovely color. And so it is the last pen in my new pen log. It is the Madoromi series, and in the light blue. And it is a fine nib. And I thought it would be really fun to kind of ink this with another iroshizuku ink, the yama-budo. So just need to get into this converter that I'm going to use with it. And while I ink this up, I can go on to the next question, which is new or used? And I think that I am definitely down for either. I do not have anything against used pens. I've gotten some of my inks used off of Facebook Marketplace. I have not had the privilege of finding a pen used that I would like to purchase. I see them on Facebook Marketplace while I'm, around looking, as maybe some of us who are obsessed with looking at Facebook Marketplace, especially living in New York City, you just find all sorts of really interesting, crazy things on there. And I've seen some pens here or there, but they were either out of my price range, or the person identified that there was an issue with the pen, and as someone who's newer into owning fountain pens, I just know that I was not going to know how to solve that issue, and so I didn't even want to make an attempt at trying to figure that out. So that is a long-winded way to say I'm not opposed to used. I obviously enjoy buying things new. And I would be happy with either. But I have yet to have an experience getting a pen used. But like I said, I have gotten some inks used. For example, this Diamine Oxblood is one that I've gotten used to try out. And I really love that ink, so I'm glad that I did. All right, so we've got this Kaküno inked up. Let me just get the cap on here. All right, and you can see here my Pilot iroshizuku yama-budo, excuse me. The next question is, this is number 18, in case you wanted to know where we are, demonstrator versus non-demonstrator. I only really have two demonstrator pens in my collection. Well, two types, I guess. I have this Asvine pen and this TWSBI Eco. I do have a second TWSBI Eco, although I don't have it within reach. And those are my kind of demonstrator pens. Oh, and my first Pilot Kaküno was clear. So I guess that counts as a demonstrator. And I really like the look of them. I think they're fun, but I think ultimately if I had to land on one side or the other, I'm definitely a non-demonstrator person. There's something about just the beautiful look of the pen without seeing the ink sloshing around that appeals to me more. And not that I don't love my TWSBIs or the Asvine, I do think they're fun to write with, but ultimately, if you put my hands behind my back and twisted, I would say that non-demonstrator is probably more where I lean in my enjoyment. While I answer this next question, number 19, I'm going to ink up my next and last pen, which is the aforementioned Muji aluminum pen. When I heard that, or learned that Muji had a pen, I was really interested in just seeing what that was like. It was pretty affordable, so I picked it up. And I learned that you can use this Faber-Castell converter to go in it, so I got one of those. I originally had this inked with the yama-budo that I've now put in my new Pilot Kaküno. But this, to me, it just feels like a very everyday carry pen. It's already kind of like nicked up and scratched because I just want to like toss it around in my bag. And so I'm going to be inking this with the DeAtramentis document ink in black blue. Originally, I had this ink in my first TWSBI Eco that I got, but that was a fine nib, and it was just, the ink was very wet and it just came out very wet. And it was actually, that was one of the issues, the only issues I've had with the new Tomoe River Stanzin paper was with this ink in that pen. So I'm hoping that in this Muji nib and in this Muji pen, maybe it will act a little differently. And if not, I just know not to use it on the Tomoe River paper at all. The next question is pen and ink matching. And I don't know if you have noticed, but in all of this re-inking of my pens for the summer, part of the need or the desire on my end to do this was to have the pens and ink kind of match a little bit more in their vibe. Some of these pens are pens that I got very early on in my like exploration of fountain pens, and because it was early, I was just kind of like, well, I got 2 inks, so in this Saffron pen goes this brown ink. And while not awful, I'm now realizing that, you know, a nice yellowy ink would probably go better there. And I don't think it necessarily has to be like a one for one, like it has a green in the pen and therefore the ink must be green. But I just feel like it needs to kind of go with the pen. And I don't know if that's just me being a little woo-woo or working off of vibes, but it just has to feel right. It's very scientific. Here's me trying to post this pen. Yeah, oh, that was actually the easiest that's ever happened. But yes, I just think that the pen and ink, they need to jive. It needs to feel like they go together. And I don't know if that's like the type A personality that I have or the need for order and structure, even though that order and structure is based off of like a feeling that I'm having. It just feels really important to me. And so, yes, the pen and ink definitely need to match. And so now in my Muji aluminum, I have my DeAtramentis document ink, blue, black. That's definitely still coming out pretty wet, so I think it is the ink itself. But it is a little better than coming out of that TWSBI. The last question that was on the list of questions was vintage or modern. I mean, part of the allure of fountain pens is this kind of nostalgic, like, analog way of living that, you know, we've kind of moved away from. And I think that having a vintage pen would be really lovely, to kind of pay homage to that and to have a piece of that past. I just wish that I could have maybe had something that my grandfather once owned, but I'm sure that they didn't think that holding on to those things was important. To them, it was like an everyday writing utensil. But I definitely think that some vintage pens look really, really gorgeous, and I would hope to own one day. So vintage or modern, I appreciate the modern for the ease of availability, although I would love to own a vintage one day. Although, you know, I think of a couple, 1 or 2, but I'm leaning more towards modern just because of how easy it is to get and to service those pens. If a vintage pen has an issue, I would be terrified to like, let me take that apart and perhaps ruin a piece of history. But I guess that's what pen shops are for. So that brings us to the end of the 20 questions about my pen preferences. I hope that it was fun to kind of go through those with me. I also hope that you can forgive some of my answers being like, I don't really have an answer, or my answer has to be this one answer because I don't have experience with the other. As I said, like, I'm someone who's kind of newer to this hobby, but it was fun to just kind of think through those thoughts with you. I hope that you enjoyed kind of having a look at my pen log here, and that you enjoyed re-inking some pens with me. Until next time, I hope that you are having a great start to your day, or middle of your day, or end of your day, whenever you're watching this, and that you enjoy exploring the possibility of the next blank page you come across. Have a great day.